On September 14, 2008, Aeroflot Flight 821 took off from Moscow, its destination Perm International Airport. The Boeing 737 was a familiar sight in the skies, a workhorse of the aviation industry. On board were 82 passengers, their lives entrusted to the crew of 6. What should have been a routine flight ended in unimaginable tragedy. As Flight 821 neared its destination, a series of fateful errors would seal its fate. The world watched in horror as news of the crash spread. 88 lives were lost, leaving behind a trail of devastation and unanswered questions. The investigation that followed would reveal a chilling truth. Pilot error fueled by alcohol had doomed Flight 821. The crash of Aeroflot Flight 821 stands as a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the unforgiving nature of human error. It is a story of negligence, poor judgment, and the catastrophic consequences that can result when safety takes a back seat to recklessness. The initial leg of Flight 821's journey was uneventful. The Boeing 737, a reliable workhorse of the skies, hummed along its designated route. As the aircraft approached Perm, however, a sense of unease began to creep into the air traffic control tower. The flight path, once a straight and predictable line on their screens, started to become erratic. Instead of a smooth descent, the aircraft was climbing and banking erratically. Controllers attempted to contact the pilots, their voices laced with concern. The responses from the cockpit were garbled, confused, painting a picture of chaos and disorientation. The control tower watched, helpless, as Flight 821, instead of aligning itself with the runway, veered sharply away, its altitude fluctuating wildly. The final moments were a blur of terror. The aircraft, now clearly out of control, plunged towards the ground, disappearing from the radar screens. The impact, when it came, was catastrophic. A fireball erupted near a residential area, marking the tragic end of Flight 821 and the lives it carried. The immediate aftermath of the crash was met with shock and disbelief. How could a routine flight end in such a horrific disaster? Investigators, their faces grim, descended upon the wreckage, determined to piece together the events that led to the tragedy. The black boxes, those silent witnesses to the unfolding drama, were recovered, their contents holding the key to the puzzle. The investigation revealed a toxic cocktail of negligence and recklessness. At the heart of the disaster was the pilot, Captain Rodion Medvedev. Blood tests revealed a shocking truth. Medvedev was intoxicated, his blood alcohol level far exceeding the legal limit for pilots. His judgment impaired, his reactions slowed. Medvedev had transformed from a seasoned pilot into a danger to himself and everyone on board. But the blame didn't rest solely on Medvedev's shoulders. The investigation also uncovered systemic failures within the airline itself. Crew resource management, the crucial teamwork and communication that are supposed to be the bedrock of aviation safety, had completely broken down. The first officer, though not intoxicated, failed to adequately challenge Medvedev's authority or take control of the aircraft when it became clear that the captain was incapacitated. As investigators delved deeper into Captain Rodion Medvedev's past, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. This was not the first time Medvedev had taken to the skies under the influence of alcohol. His recklessness, it seemed, had a history, one that should have permanently grounded him. Years earlier, while at the helm of a Tupolev Tu-134, Medvedev had once again flown while intoxicated. On that occasion, the crew had recognized the danger and managed to wrest control from their impaired captain, averting disaster. Reports were filed, concerns were raised, but Medvedev, it seemed, had escaped serious consequences. He was allowed to continue flying, a chilling testament to the lax oversight that permeated the airline. The crash of Flight 821 was not simply a tragic accident, it was an avoidable tragedy, the result of turning a blind eye to a pilot's dangerous behavior. Medvedev's history of flying under the influence should have been a glaring red flag, a clear indication that he was unfit to command an aircraft. Section 5. Voices from the ground, witness to horror. The crash of Flight 821 sent shockwaves through the community surrounding Perm International Airport. For those on the ground, it was a scene of unimaginable horror, the sudden, violent intrusion of tragedy into their lives. Eyewitnesses described the aircraft as a falling comet, a streak of fire against the twilight sky. Among the victims were families returning from vacations, businessmen on their way to meetings, and ordinary people whose lives were cut short in an instant. One of the passengers, General Gennady Troshev, a high-ranking Russian military figure, was returning from celebrating his 60th birthday. His presence on the flight added another layer of grief and loss to an already devastating event. The impact of the crash extended far beyond the immediate vicinity of the airport. The loss of 88 lives reverberated around the world, a stark reminder of the interconnectedness of human life and the shared sense of grief that transcends borders. Section 6. Mapping the tragedy, a technical perspective. The flight data recorder and cockpit voice recorder, recovered from the wreckage of Flight 821, provided investigators with a chillingly detailed account of the final moments. These black boxes, resilient even in the face of catastrophic damage, held the key to understanding the technical aspects of the crash. The data painted a grim picture. The aircraft's altitude and airspeed fluctuated wildly as Captain Medvedev, his judgment clouded by alcohol, struggled to control the plane. The flight path, visible on radar screens and reconstructed from the data recorders, resembled a child's scribble rather than the controlled descent of an experienced pilot. The technical analysis revealed a series of errors, each compounding the previous one. Asymmetric engine thrust, likely caused by improper control inputs, sent the aircraft veering off course. The crew's failure to recognize and correct the problem, a breakdown in basic piloting procedures, allowed the situation to spiral out of control. Section 7. Perm's troubled airspace, a history of close calls. The crash of Aeroflot Flight 821 was not an isolated incident in the history of Perm International Airport. The region had seen its share of aviation accidents and near misses, a troubling pattern that pointed to underlying safety concerns. While every incident is unique, the recurrence of such events in a particular location often reveals systemic issues that need to be addressed. In the years preceding the Flight 821 crash, there had been several incidents involving aircraft approaching or departing from Perm. These incidents, while not all resulting in fatalities, highlighted potential weaknesses in air traffic control procedures, pilot training, or airport infrastructure. The crash of Flight 821, while primarily caused by pilot error, brought the issue of Perm's aviation safety record into sharp focus. It raised questions about whether lessons had been learned from previous incidents, and whether enough was being done to mitigate risks in the region's airspace. Section 8. The Unforgiving Price of Negligence. The crash of Aeroflot Flight 821, with its tragic loss of 88 lives, stands as a stark reminder of the unforgiving nature of aviation. In the realm of flight, there is little room for error, and the consequences of negligence can be catastrophic. This disaster, like so many others, was entirely preventable. The investigation revealed a cascade of failures, each one contributing to the tragic outcome. Captain Medvedev's decision to fly while intoxicated was a blatant disregard for the safety of his passengers and crew. The airline's failure to address his previous transgressions, allowing him to continue flying despite a known history of alcohol abuse, was a systemic failure of the highest order. The crash of Flight 821 serves as a harsh lesson in the importance of accountability and the need for unwavering adherence to safety regulations. It is a reminder that cutting corners, whether driven by complacency, cost-cutting measures, or a disregard for human life, can have devastating consequences. Section 9. Beyond Flight 821, a call for unwavering vigilance. The crash of Aeroflot Flight 821 should serve as a wake-up call for the aviation industry worldwide. It highlights the importance of a safety culture that permeates every level of the industry, from the cockpit to the boardroom. Preventing future tragedies requires a multifaceted approach, one that addresses both human factors and systemic weaknesses. Pilot training programs must place a greater emphasis on the dangers of alcohol and drug abuse, as well as the importance of crew resource management. Airlines must foster an environment where crew members feel empowered to speak up if they have concerns about safety, without fear of reprisal. The investigation into Flight 821 revealed that there had been opportunities to prevent the tragedy. Crew members had expressed concerns about Medvedev's behavior, but their warnings went unheeded. A culture of silence where fear of retribution trumps safety concerns has no place in aviation.